Yeah, so it is scary in the beginning, and really you don't really realize initially that it is fear and it's beliefs and stories that are running that are causing the fear. And I think awareness is the first step, is realizing as soon as you want to do something and that voice says, "Oh, you can't do that. What will people think? Oh, no, you shouldn't do that. Now's not the right time. You need to wait till you're older, or you need to wait till you have more money, or you need to wait. You need to wait. Oh, you know." And as soon as you hear that story, just go, stop. Just stop it.
You're listening to Midlife Strategies for Badass Women, the no BS podcast for women over 40 who are sick of playing by someone else's rules. I'm your host, Sue Willoughby, badass midlife strategist, truth teller, and professional fire starter for midlife reinvention. Around here, we don't do fluff. We do real talk, bold strategies, and badass breakthroughs. Because midlife isn't a crisis, it's your damn power move. If you're all in, unapologetic, and ready to reinvent, let's get started. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Midlife Strategies for Badass Women. My badass guest today is Drenda Thomas. She is a best-selling author. She is also, how do I put this? She's also a BS expert. And she has a best-selling book called Dare to Remember, Uncover Who You Were Before the BS. So Drenda is a lot of things, and I'm going to let her tell us a little bit about where she came from, why the BS, or why get rid of the BS. And I'm just going to let her, in her own words, tell us a little bit about, Drenda, how did you get to where you are? How did you get to become a best-selling author on the topic of BS? And welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. So, I guess I was just raised with a bunch of BS and I got tired of it and it was time to deal with it. It's basically that in a nutshell.
Okay, we're done here. This is the shortest podcast in history. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I was raised in a pastor's home, second generation pastor's kid, very evangelical, very rigid, high control religion, I guess is the term for it these days. A lot of BS with that. I had a lot of questions growing up, didn't get a lot of solid, reasonable, logical answers. And so there was always questions and stuff. And so raising questions, you got told to be quiet, or you're a Jezebel or troublemaker or whatever. So
Jezebel.
Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah, I've been a Jezebel on many occasions.
Well, I just want to interrupt you for just a second. What kind of questions were you asking that would make you a Jezebel?
Well, the questions about, why can't women speak up? And why are women treated as second class? And why can't women teach men? And you say this, but you do this. I don't understand. And the Bible says this, and none of it's lining up. So what's going on here? Or, you pastor, your relationship with the woman on the front row seems to be a little bit too intimate. What's going on there? And, things like that will get you in trouble.
I see. So you were observing things and you were just asking questions as any normal kid would, or any young person would be like, I don't get it. Why is this like that? I don't understand. And you weren't getting the answers that you wanted.
No, I mean, questions like, so our denomination, well, it's a fellowship, not a denomination, didn't believe in drinking alcohol. But the same denomination in the North or on the West Coast drank wine. And so I would ask my mom, well, how come they can drink and we can't? And she said, well, they're not really saved. And I'm like, but they go to the same church and they allegedly believe the same thing we do. So how does that mean that they're not saved? And I never got answers. Or the time that, you're being taught that no sin will enter heaven. And so I would ask my dad, the pastor, so, what if there's a man and he just lost his job and he's desperate and he has a kid at home that needs milk and there's no money and it's late at night and he doesn't have any friends. He's new in town, blah, blah, blah. And he goes into a convenience store and he buys a gallon of milk and he comes out and he gets hit or he doesn't buy it. He steals a gallon of milk and he comes out and he gets hit by a bus. What happens then? And he goes, well, he's in hell. He'll burn in hell. And I'm like, for one thing, but he did it. He's not a thief at heart. He was doing it out of desperation and trying to save his kid's life, basically, because they had no food. And he's like, doesn't matter, that's sin. No sin enters heaven. Wow. So there was a lot of that stuff that just didn't seem to jive, didn't seem to make sense. And so that just kind of started, the whole questioning and stuff in that realm. And then, I was started out in law enforcement, and then there's, back then there weren't that many women. There were some, but you're taught you just have to act like the men and do things like the men do because it's a male dominated profession. Pretty much still is, And so you get taught to think and act like men, and you stuff and repress the things that make you unique as a woman. So there are things that didn't line up there as well. And so then you buy into all that BS about you have to act like a man, you have to be tougher than everybody else. And in the academy, I did have to be tougher than the men and rank in the top part of my class because I had to prove myself. I had to work harder to prove myself because I was a female.
That's a lot of stuff to overcome. Being repressed as a child and then in law enforcement and having to feel like you had to overachieve to even feel even remotely equal. And I think that those scenarios come up a lot for women. What did you do where are you now? And what did you do to kind of overcome those things and start to understand how to be in a different way?
So unfortunately, I continued doing things that way because that's the only way I knew for so long. And, and I backslid or whatever you call it. And then I came back and did some mission type things, still doing it their way to some extent. But I was like, I can't just do the church thing. So I did street ministry. And I went into the strip clubs and gave gift bags to the dancers. So I was doing things a little differently in my way, pushing the envelope. But still, there was a lot of the beliefs and stories and that control still holding on to me. And then in corporate, still trying to work harder, be the first one in the office, stay later than the boss, all of that stuff. And it wasn't until like 2020, and not because of COVID, but because I was tired of doing the same things over and over and not getting, kind of the insanity thing. I was still getting the same outcomes and nothing was changing, and I was sabotaging myself and I couldn't figure out why. So I found a transformational coaching program, and that's when I started learning about the beliefs and stories that we have that are in our subconscious. And it was through that program that I started understanding exactly where all of that BS came from, and dealing with it and releasing it. And through that, I became a hypnotist, and I truly really started understanding the power of the mind, the subconscious mind. And, then I was like, this is what I've been missing. Prayer can do so much. Reading your Bible. Yeah, okay, maybe that can help some people, but sometimes you just can't read enough to get the help you need. But this, dealing with the subconscious, to me was the answer that I had been missing in trying to help others overcome life-controlling problems, overcoming their self-sabotage, things like that.
Yeah, I love that. I also just want to be clear. The BS that we've been talking about here is not what you think BS is, although there is, although there is that. But when Drenda talks about BS, she's talking about beliefs and stories. And I love that because it's so true. And that is that's what we do. It's like, think about like the old days when radio stations used to have these carts or cartridges, right? Where they'd have all their ads and all their stuff on cartridges, and you'd have to put in the cart and play that tape. That's what beliefs and stories are, right?
Yep,
They're
absolutely.
just, we always spin off into whatever is convenient that helps us justify what it is that we're doing or how we're behaving or how we're being treated or whatever. So tell us a little bit more, go a little bit deeper about your experiences once you started to understand the subconscious. And you said you got into hypnotherapy. And how did that change you? What came up for you specifically? Clearly, it's a lot around the religion and all of that, but tell me a little bit more about that.
The first thing that came up was money. And so,
Interesting.
Yeah. So it was like, I made a good salary, but I was still in debt. And it was like, well, what is going on here? Because I could make so much money and then still spend a lot of it. And it was like, well, what is going on? And so it was through that I actually saw a hypnotist and discovered that there were things that were going on in my subconscious that I'd never realized. Like my dad would say, rich people are show-offs. And well, I didn't want to be a show-off. So you hear these things as a kid and you don't realize that your dad is just jealous or whatever it is, or he's got his own BS that he's dealing with that he grew up with. But all you hear is, well, that sounds bad. I don't want to be a show off, so I can't have, so what it turns into is I can't have money and a nice house. So I have to unconsciously start spending the money so that you can't afford the nice house because you don't want to be the show off. And there were some other things about savings and stuff that I think because of the control that I'd had growing up that I did not want that kind of control. And so I didn't want to be controlled in this way. And so I would spend money because when I was growing up, I had a job, a summer job as a kid, but I wasn't allowed to spend my money like I wanted to. I had to, whatever. And so and I remember as a kid thinking, when I get my own money, I'm going to spend it however I want. And so then those stories that I told myself as a kid were coming out in adulthood and I didn't even realize it.
Interesting.
And so hypnosis, dealing with those situations and confronting those situations helped me get to a place where, my finances are in great shape. I do have a home, a lovely home, a home that, my dad probably would say I'm a show off, but whatever. It's a beautiful home and I love it. So there you go.
Yeah. That's interesting that money was one of the big things that came up. I do remember talking about beliefs and stories. My dad used to tell me, don't be like your mother. Just because there's checks in the book doesn't mean there's money in the bank. And I was like, that was a belief that I was hearing. That was something that I was hearing. And it was like, that don't spend your money that you don't have. Right. Which is not a bad thing to tell a kid. But at the same time, it's kind of like, well, you still is like, okay, well, if mom's doing that, dad's saying, you know what I mean? It's definitely an interesting thing. Do you feel that, how do you think women treat money differently than men?
That's an interesting question because I think there are a lot of beliefs and stories and a lot of BS that we hear as a kid that girls aren't good in math. And so, well, I can't be expected to do my checkbook because I'm not good at math. So I need a man to take care of me or help me with my finances. And it's like, that is a bunch of BS because you are smart. You can learn this and you need to learn where your money is. Even if you're married and you have a great income, he could die at any moment. And so you need to understand where that money is and understand what to do with it. I don't have to say you have to be a financial expert and have an MBA in finance, but understand the basics and know where the money is. But I think we also hear money doesn't grow on trees,
Mm-mm.
and that kind of limits us because we think, well, there's only a limited amount of money that I can ever earn because it doesn't grow on trees. And then it's like you stifle the universe or stifle God and the ability to have abundance because, well, money doesn't grow on trees. And if they got a raise, well, that means I can't get one, or my friend got this great amount of money came in. How come I don't? And it's like you subconsciously and unintentionally block the flow of abundance by having those thoughts.
Yeah, that's interesting. And there are so many ways to have that scarcity mindset, like you said, whether it's, even with my dad, right? That's a scarcity kind of thing. Just because there's checks in the book doesn't mean that there's money in the bank. That's an, way of saying that, you're never going to have enough to cover the checks that you write. So don't even think about it. And also the point that you made about women not knowing what's going on with the finances, right? There's been there's been movies. Here we go. There's movies made where, yes, the husband dies and the woman thinks that they're really financially well off. Come to find out, they're broke. And I think it's difficult that, and it's not so much these days, but more a different generation where the women didn't work and or didn't have jobs and were dependent on the men to handle all the finances and didn't even understand, like you said, where's the money? What's it doing? How do I access it? All of that stuff. And I think that is, that's changed or changing for sure, as women get more independent and we're like, here, I'll give you the BS. You're going to control me and my money. I know where everything is, and I want to know where your money is too. But I love that. I think that I think that that's great, and it's interesting that I do think women have issues around money, and I think it just comes from the whole beliefs and stories that we grew up with as young girls, and it's not just money; it's everything. So
Yeah.
tell us a little bit more. So the money thing came up for you. What else came up for you that was really, that maybe surprised you?
The money thing really was the biggest surprise. Something else that my dad always told me was, well, you made your bed, you have to lie in it. And it's like, and I thought that was true, that, okay, I made my decision, I'm stuck with it. And in some cases, okay, I bought a car I shouldn't have. That's one thing. But to get into a relationship or a marriage that, it's not good for you, it's toxic, they beat you or something, you need to get out. It's like, I don't want to be stuck like that. And it wasn't until just probably 3 or 4 years ago that I realized that's just some BS, that, I'm not stuck in this bed. I can change the sheets. I can buy a new bed. I can leave the house that the bed is in. I am not stuck with this decision, whatever that decision is. No matter how minor or major it is, I am not stuck. I can always make a different decision. And sometimes it's a tiny, tiny little tweak. And sometimes you just have to turn and walk 180. But the good thing is you always have a decision. You always have a choice. And there's freedom in that. That it's so empowering to know that you can make a different decision. Okay, well, that did not give me the outcome I thought it was going to give me. That kind of sucks. Let's do something different. Let's totally change it. Or, well, I just need to do this, this, and this, and it'll give me the outcome I want. And so you just reframe it and you learn from it and you're not stuck. And it is empowering and gives you the confidence that you can do anything because you are not stuck.
Yes. And that's really difficult for some people to understand. I mean, because it does all those things. When you talk about being able to understand that you do have a choice, there's a lot of fears that come up. There's, fear of failing, fear of all of these things. I understand the process, but how do people understand the fear and why that is stopping them and how to get beyond that.
Yeah, so it is scary in the beginning, and really you don't really realize initially that it is fear, and it's beliefs and stories that are running that are causing the fear. And I think awareness is the first step, is realizing as soon as you want to do something and that voice says, "Oh, you can't do that. What will people think? Oh, no, you shouldn't do that. Now's not the right time. You need to wait till you're older, or you need to wait till you have more money, or you need to wait. You need to wait. Oh, you know." And as soon as you hear that story, just go, stop. Just stop it. Do a pattern interrupt kind of thing. Clap your hands, snap your fingers, do something to stop that thought. And then you get that moment in between where you can either think a different thought, or you can go, well, isn't that interesting? Wonder where that came from. And then you can kind of dive into, where did I start hearing that the first time? And then you can kind of deal with it from there. Like, well, is that really true? Or is that just another story or a belief? And if it's like something simple, you can just do the opposite, you know? And if it's like, I want to take a different route to work. Oh, but what about traffic? What if this? What if that? Well, why don't you just do it anyway? I mean, it's something very simple. It's not going to be, I mean, maybe it turns out bad and you have an extra 15-minute commute, but it gives you the chance to try something new and try something different. And it rewires your brain a little bit when you do things differently. And so just stopping and giving yourself that moment to really look at, well, why can't I do this? And we always think, what if it doesn't work out? What are people going to think? But what if you started thinking, what if it does work out? What if this is what I'm looking for? What if good instead of what if bad all the time? And the whole energy changes. Your whole mood shifts, your whole energy, the whole frequency changes when you say, but what if good? And you open up opportunities for good to happen rather than shutting everything down and staying stuck, staying in your comfort zone.
I love what you said about, is that true? And that reminds me about Byron Katie's work of, the work where you ask yourself, when those stories pop up, is that true? Am I making that up, or is that true? Is that a fact? Yeah. And then when you stop and do that for a second, like, I like the pattern interrupt. It's like, okay, spin around in a circle, clap your hands, do a jumping jack, do whatever, because that's going to break a little bit of your thought pattern. Is going to wake you up. It's like if you're daydreaming and somebody, siren goes off or something, you're like, whoa, what happened? And then you can start to ask those questions like, is that true? And I think that is such a beautiful question to ask or be asked. Like, is that true? And then you start to go, well, yes, you can justify it. That doesn't mean that it's true, right?
And even as you're justifying, you can kind of see that you kind of see that you're making excuses, and then you can call BS on yourself.
Yeah.
You can call bullshit on yourself and say, no, this doesn't have to be true. This is just what I've been told. And is it really true? Let's try let's try and find out. It's not like we're making oxygen. The planets are not going to stop spinning if we try something new or try something different. I mean, sometimes it's as simple as, let's try something new on the menu. I go to a restaurant, I go there all the time. I have my favorites, and I always want to try this dish, but I'm afraid I'm going to be disappointed. Okay, so I'm disappointed, and I spent some money that I'm disappointed with, but at least I tried something new and different, and I know that I'll still like my favorites. But it can be a baby step, something simple. You don't have to uproot your whole life, sell everything and move somewhere. It doesn't have to be something big. Doing the baby steps, if you've never done this before, it gives you the confidence that as you take one step and you didn't die, well, I can take another step and let's see what happens. And as you take more
Yeah.
steps, you get more confidence. You feel more confident, and doors begin to open up that you never imagined.
Yeah, and I call them turtle steps or tortoise steps because that's what a tortoise would do. They take a step and then they stop, and then they take another step and then they stop. This is because of the way they move so slowly. But even when you're watching a small child like take their first steps, they're all just like wobbly baby. They take a step forward and they kind of like lean back and then they go forward again, and then they're like, okay, I can take another step, and it's interesting to watch. And I think, like you were saying, stepping out of your comfort zone means you have to start something new or something fresh. And when you do that, all those fears start to bubble up. But at the same time, back to the kind of like the work example where you're asking yourself those questions. Is it true? Is it true? Is it true? What would my life be like, or what would this situation be like if it wasn't that? If I wasn't, if I was thinking differently, if that was not even a consideration, like what if I had all the money in the world and I could buy that house, or I could buy that car, or I could do whatever, how would I feel? And
How
then
would
just
I
like,
feel, and how would I act differently? And
yeah,
what choices would I make then, and
mm-hmm,
start making them now?
right. Yeah. The whole, like, not what if in a bad way, but if I were, when you act as if something is
Uh-huh.
already like, I have all the resources I need. I don't have a scarcity of money or a scarcity of time or whatever. What can I do with that? And I think that, like you said, it really does shift your body, your mind, your whole being, and the way that you look at things. And like you said, those blockages start to unblock, right?
Yeah.
Those walls become speed bumps and challenges and things that you're like, bring it.
Yeah, absolutely. Those things that seemed insurmountable become
Yeah.
like, well, what was I afraid of? Why didn't I do this sooner? And then you don't beat yourself up. You're doing the best that you could with the knowledge that you had, and then
Yeah.
just move on and just realize this is awesome. I can apply this to any area. And like with the kid that's learning to walk, they don't realize that they can't walk. They just keep on going, and they keep trying no matter how many times they fall down or bump their head or whatever.
Yeah,
They just get up
exactly.
and do it again. And that's the same with us. We just keep going and keep trying, and eventually we're walking and running and jumping and climbing trees and doing all sorts of stuff that's fun.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, but when we get older, we forget about that. We
Yeah.
forget that we can do that. We can bump into things and we can, not hit our head. Well, we don't want to hit our head too often when we get older, because I've had a couple of concussions and I'm like, okay, it's not as fun as when I was a kid. But seriously, we forget. We
Mhm.
forget because we just shut those things down. So are you still practicing hypnosis as a
Yeah,
practitioner, or do you work with people on that level?
I do. I do. I've kind of transitioned in some of the hypnosis and stuff, not the old scripts and all, but there's a conversational type of hypnosis that I do. And, yeah, so I do that, but I also have some programs that, use hypnosis, but yeah, just dealing with the subconscious, informing people like that, but doing a little bit more speaking on failure, changing the whole perception of failure, and finding yourself in a faith crisis, which is more about finding out who you are, and
Mm.
um, dealing with those questions, either reconstructing or deconstructing, or just facing the questions. So yeah, that's kind of where I am these days.
I love that. So you work directly. You coach women, men, anyone? Who do you serve in your practice and with your programs?
So mainly women. I've had male clients, but mainly women, professional women, badass women. Um, that feel stuck either in a career or toxic relationship, and they don't understand why. So it's mainly that, but I also work with corporations and giving talks to early career and whomever on mindset type of things.
Yeah, that's cool. So when you work with corporate groups or corporations, that's very different than working with individuals. And what are some of the things that come up? Is there like a recurring theme when you're let me back up a little bit. With the people that you work with, women, and let's say women individually, what is the biggest topic and the biggest recurring theme that you see or that you deal with?
So with women in particular, a lot of it is around some of it's around relationships and being either not having somebody, feeling desperate because they don't have somebody, or returning to abusive type relationships and not understanding why even though they're smart, professional, and very successful at work, their personal life is a train wreck. And so they don't understand why they keep returning to abusive situations. And there's been that. In corporate, it's more helping people overcome the fear, mainly dealing with failure and changing the perception of failure. And the early career, I was surprised that early career was really interested in this topic. I thought it was more mid-career, those of us who have been beat up enough or beat down enough. I thought that early career would be different, but apparently it really helps them because they're in a place where they're kind of afraid. Some of them are feel entitled, but I think underneath it all, they're all still afraid. They're afraid of not being able to perform at a certain level, or afraid of making a mistake, afraid of whatever, and not realizing that you learn from everything, that all of the junk, whether it's a failure, it's only a failure if you think it is, because failure is feedback. And so just taking that and giving them something to hold on to and just reframe failure so that they can move on in their careers without some of the BS that others of us have had to deal with.
Right. Do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah.
I've been there. Trust me. I love that when you're talking about young people that are just starting out in a career, feeling like I deserve this, a little bit of entitlement, but behind that is really a lot of insecurity. And the word failure is so negative, right? It's just like, I think the fear of failure or anything around the word failure, like you said, it's information. It's, what did you say? It's feedback. Failure
Uh-huh.
is feedback, right? It's something that you're learning. It's a learning opportunity. So is there a way we can ever take that word out of the language, out of the English language? What else can we call failure? Because it just sounds so finite and so awful. And I mean, I've experienced it, a lot in my life where I'm like, oh, I failed this. And you look at like, oh, the dark side of it, like, oh, this business didn't take off or whatever. But what did you take away? What did you learn in the process? How can we get rid of the word failure? Just curious.
I prefer to call it an unexpected outcome.
Ah, I like that. That sounds very corporate in some ways. That's
Yeah.
a buzzword bingo. Unexpected outcome.
Yeah, that did not turn out the way I thought or I had planned. Huh. So yeah, I try to avoid that F word, but yeah.
I think that's great. I love unexpected outcome. Because the thing, the F word, because it's true. It's like, and the thing is, and you also said, it didn't come out the way I planned or what I think failure, and I'm using the old air quotes here, is all about our expectations. I think we set our expectations so high. We need to achieve this level of whatever. And if we don't, then we are a failure. This project was a failure. This whatever was a failure. And it's like, yeah, but maybe you got 3/4 of the way there. Let's celebrate that. It
Yeah.
wasn't a complete failure. Like you said, it's just an unexpected outcome.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you got 3/4 of the way there, that's still a success because you're 3/4 of the way there.
Yeah.
And then maybe the last quarter doesn't even need to happen, or maybe it needs to be changed because what you've learned from the first 3/4 may have a totally different impact than you expected or you didn't expect. And so
Yeah.
you need to change it to move forward. So it's not bad. It doesn't
Yeah.
have to be bad.
And
So,
that's why I think that if we look at things like not a beginning and an end,
mhm.
if it's more of cyclical, right? Because as you're going through things, you're evaluating. And this happens to me a lot. I don't know, probably have ADHD, but I will start a project and then I'm like, okay. And then I, will work that project or work that thought or work that thing that I'm interested in. And then I'm like, oh, but look at this other thing over here. Once again, the ADHD. But, and then I'm like, oh, can I bring that into the loop? And it's like, if I totally let go the first thing, I'm okay with it. I'm like, well, all right. Well, I worked that. I didn't feel like it was going anywhere. It didn't feel like it fulfilled me. I'm going to explore this other thing. But I do
Mhm.
think if we're constantly thinking about things and evaluating where we are with that thing or that project or that person and that relationship or whatever, it gives us incremental information that we can then say, okay, and make better decisions without feeling like I didn't achieve this big, huge, stinking goal that I made for myself, and now I'm a flop.
Yeah,
Does
and
that
I
make
like that
sense?
you said evaluate because
Yeah.
evaluate, there's no judgment there. And
Yeah.
so when we start judging ourselves as a failure or it's good or bad, that's too restrictive, too constricting, and it has that negative connotation and that feel to it. When you're just evaluating, it's like, huh, well, this worked and this didn't work so well. And it's not a good or bad. It's not a judgment. It's not an either or. It could be both and. We
Mm-hmm.
forget that it can be both and. It doesn't have to be either or.
Yeah.
And I think that we restrict ourselves unnecessarily because we make it either or, and it doesn't have to be that way.
Both things can be true.
Yes. It can suck,
Uh,
and I can still learn from it.
exactly. We can have an unexpected outcome and it can still be a success.
Yes.
What a great way to spin things. Oh my gosh, that's so funny. Well, as we're getting ready to wrap up here, this has been great, and I love your perspective on things. And so, what are you doing now? And if somebody wants to get in touch with you and learn more about what you do and how to possibly work with you, what is the best way that they can do that?
I have a website, drendathomasrichards.com. Instagram is the same, Drenda Thomas Richards. So everything's like Drenda Thomas Richards. So
Perfect.
Facebook and Instagram. There's probably a few TikToks out there too where I'm on a rant.
Were you dancing in those TikToks?
No, I was doing a rant on how men like to tell women what to do. I'm sure there's a few of
Oh,
those out there, and I took issue with it. So I was like, oh, hell no, kind of TikTok.
I love that. Yeah, well, I'm going to go look that up right now. And then the other thing I noticed that you mentioned that you wanted to offer is a sacred soul detox guide. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the detox is not just a physical detox because I mean there is that piece of it, but there's also kind of a releasing of the BS. It kind of walks you through some steps of how to start getting rid of some of that BS. So it's a holistic approach
Huh.
to getting rid of everything, really, the things that don't serve us, So um, there's like a bath which cleanses you physically, but
Mm.
also there are some tips on how to cleanse your mind as well, renew your mind and things like that. So yeah.
Great. I love that. And that also, I'll put a link for that in the show notes as well.
Yes.
So what is one thing that you would like to end with? One piece of advice, one tip, one trick, one whatever that you would like to share as we close up here?
I think I would like for people to remember that they are limitless and that in spite of everything that you've been told in society and everybody else wants to say that puts us in a box or puts these rules or boundaries on us, to remember that you are limitless, that when you came into this world, there was nothing that you couldn't do. There was nothing that you couldn't be. And you still are that same person and you still have that capability of being limitless, that you can do anything that you want to do. It's only you and your mind that's limiting you. So
I love that. That's great. Be limitless. Drenda, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure talking with you today. And for those of you who have been listening to our conversation, if this hit home and if this resonated with you, take it to heart, share the episode with a friend, get in contact with Drenda, and don't worry about those unexpected outcomes because that's all they are. Until next week, this is Sue Willoughby, and I will be back next week with another fascinating episode of Midlife Strategies for Badass Women. Thanks again, Drenda.
thank you. It was a pleasure.